Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Movie Goodness, where we examine life through cinema here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and today I'm asking all of you to journey with me to the depths of hell, Hell's Kitchen to be exact, as we examine the comic book character Daredevil. And to put it more plainly, we're going back 10 years ago in 2015 when Netflix decided to dip their toe into the superhero phenomenon that was going on around that era and still going on today by giving us Daredevil, a show that lasted 3 seasons on Netflix, and 3 excellent seasons, I may add, and spawned off different series. We had Jessica Jones, we had The Punisher, Luke Cage, and to a lesser extent, Iron Fist. And they had a crossover event with all of those characters with the Defenders. But we're going to go into, well, at least focus mainly on Daredevil because on March the 4th on Disney Plus, we get Daredevil Born Again, a brand new series. In according to certain publications, I don't know if all of them are reporting this, if any of this is true. We're getting a continuation of those 3 seasons on Netflix with Daredevil Born Again, but this go around, this will be canon. This will be a part of the MCU proper. It's going to fit in to the Avengers. It's going to fit into Iron Man and Spider-Man and Agatha all along and WandaVision. It's all part of the universe for real. With the Netflix shows, it was and it wasn't. It was kind of part of it, just like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which was on ABC around that time. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was a part of the MCU technically, but not really. In the first couple of seasons, they directly reference things that were going on in the films, with even had Nick Fury, had Samuel Jackson pop up on that show and kind of connected that show to the MCU. But as seasons went on, it kind of separated itself. And I don't know if they separated it or the MCU separated themselves from it. It was a pretty decent show. It kind of filtered at the end, went a little out of the box, but it was decent. It was watchable. I watched it, but that's besides the point. What I did watch and enjoy all the way through was Daredevil. This show was everything that I guess other comic book films and television shows were lacking, and that was realism. What made this show so special was its realism, its grounded approach to superheroism. It really grounded us as characters. It gave us characters that we can relate to. And that's not to say we can't relate with Peter Parker or Tony Stark or Steve Rogers and so on and so forth in the Marvel universe, but it's something about Daredevil. It's something about the Punisher. It's something about Froggy. It's something about all of these characters that you can relate to because it's nothing fantastical about these characters. They're normal human beings. There are no superpowers and flying abilities and all this here. Maybe a little touch of superhuman elements to a degree, but not out of the realm of possibility. But it was so grounded, so violent, so gritty. The tone was dark, and I loved every minute of it. But before we jump into these seasons, we're gonna go over seasons 1, 2, and 3 of Daredevil, and not go over them in the sense of every episode, every scene, breakdown. They got channels on YouTube that will do that for you, and I'm gonna leave it to them. I'm gonna leave it to those fine men and young ladies who are breaking down all of these shows. I've seen a few of them on YouTube. At least I've seen the thumbnails from 'em, but they do a good job at that. Me personally, I wouldn't, because we'll be here for 2 years trying to break down everything about those Netflix shows. But I just want to touch in on a few points. In the event, that this is canon, that they're going to continue on with this story or the stories that we left off with in the Netflix era of Marvel. And I'm looking forward. I just want to take this time to say I'm looking forward to Daredevil Born Again on Disney Plus. I when they made this announcement, during either Comic Con or one of these cons, that Kevin Feige comes out and gives the list of the timeline of all of the films coming out in the next 2-3 years, and phase 5 and 6 and all this here. When he announced Daredevil Born Again as a series on Disney Plus, I was bought in. I was you got me. You got me. The movies didn't excite me that much because Daredevil became one of my I don't want to say favorite, because we use that so often and loosely, Oh, that's one of my favorites. That's one of my favorites. He's not one of my favorite characters, but he's a character that I truly have grown to appreciate, because in the comic books he wasn't. I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. I've read a few issues of Daredevil. I found the character interesting. A blind superhero. Okay, let's see where this goes. And it was good. He was a good. Matt Murdock is a very interesting character, but I just couldn't connect with him. And then when the film came out that starred Ben Affleck and Michael Clark Duncan and Jennifer Garner and Colin Farrell, by the way, he was in that as well as Bullseye. But it was so campy, but I enjoyed it. I really did. Now when I watch that movie, I see the cheese, I see the bad CGI, the bad quality. I just, I understand it now, but it's still watchable. I don't hold it in high regard. I never did hold it in high regard. I think Ben Affleck did a pretty decent job as Matt Murdock. Granted, never was a big Daredevil guy, so it really didn't bother me. It really didn't. That's why when they announced Ben Affleck as Batman a few years later, I was like, well, I can see it. When the internet lost their collective minds about it, I was like, okay, that's cool. I don't see the problem. But a lot of people referred to the fact that he played Matt Murdock and butchered that role, but it didn't bother me. But anyway, before we get into all of that, let's get into the character himself, Daredevil. Who is Daredevil, and where did he come from? What brought about this superhero? And in case you don't know who Daredevil is and what he can do, let's get into that as well. Daredevil is a superhero. He appeared in comic books published by Marvel Comics. He was created by the great, the late, the legend, the icon himself, Stan Lee, and Bill Everest, and also had some input by the great Jack Kirby as well. The character first premiered in Daredevil #1 in April of 1964. Daredevil is the alias of Matthew Michael Matt Murdock. He's a lawyer, blinded in childhood in a chemical accident that gave him special abilities. While growing up in New York's Hell Kitchen, a crime-ridden working-class Irish American neighborhood, Murdock pushes a man from the path of an oncoming truck and is blinded by radioactive substance that falls from the vehicle. And that was the thing in comic books. It was always radioactive, especially with comic books that were mainly written in the 60s, or characters that were created around the 50s and the 60s, radioactive stuff was like the bee's knees. So radioactive substance is what blinded Matt Murdock as a child. His exposure to this radioactive material heightened his remaining I can't get it out. Senses, uh, even though it took away his sight, it heightened his other senses beyond normal human ability and gave him this kind of a radar sense, uh, like a bat, like he has echo, like he can hear things from miles away. It's crazy. His father was a boxer named Jack Murdoch, and he was a single father raising this blind son now, and he was seeking a better life for himself and for Matt, so he got back into boxing, took it more seriously, and tried to earn money for his son and himself. And one day, gangsters approached him about throwing a fight, and he refused to do it. And so, being as though he refused to do it, the gangsters killed him. And due to these events, this left Matt Murdock an orphan. And so he honed his skills, his physical abilities, his superhuman senses under the tutelage of this mysterious blind stranger named Stick, and eventually became a highly skilled and expert martial artist. He some years later he graduated from law school. Matt seeked out the criminal element in Hell's Kitchen and began to fight crime as well. He targeted the local gangsters who murdered his father and succeeded in bringing them to justice. Eventually, in an ironic twist to his Catholic upbringing and beliefs, Matt donned a costume attire modeled after a devil and takes up a dual life of fighting crime against the criminal underground in New York City as the masked vigilante Daredevil. Some of the themes that the Marvel comic books touch in on involving Daredevil, uh, he really fights with or fights against political corruption. He deals with the Irish Catholic identity and culture as well. They touch in on that a lot in the comic books. Blindness, really goes in depth with the blindness, and shedding a light on it is not a caricature of blind people or an insult towards blind people. It is really shining a light on that community. Violence and trauma, especially childhood trauma, deals with that a lot. We touched in on some of his powers. Like I said, he has a heightened sense. His senses are heightened, despite the fact he doesn't see. He can't see, but all of his other four senses operate at a superhuman level. Just for an example, Daredevil can identify people by their distinct heartbeat. It's like a fingerprint, the way your heart beats, and he knows who you are by your heartbeat. You could be standing in a room, he knows that is you. With 50 other people in there. It's crazy how he's like a human lie detector test as well. By that heartbeat, he can tell if you're lying because your heart will kind of switch to a different rhythm when you're lying. It's a what they call it, a polygraph. Yeah, it's a lie detector. It's a polygraph thing, and so that is amazing. He is often called the man without fear, and I often wondered why doesn't he have fear? I used to think that as a kid. It took me till I got older to really realize why. How can you be afraid of something you can't see? And and that's what him doing all this parkour and jumping off of building tops and all his other foolishness, like nothing. He's not afraid of nothing. Is because he can't see it. I mean, there's nothing to fear. I don't fear. I don't fear a tiger right now because there's no tigers around me. Now you put me in a zoo and put me in that enclosure with a tiger. Yeah, I'm a pull a brick, but right now I'm not afraid of him because I don't see one around me, and that's him. He's there's nothing that can strike fear in him because it ain't like somebody big and strong and intimidating can stand in front of him and flex on him, like, doing that for show because well, not for him because he can't see. So that's one cool factor that Daredevil possesses. But Daredevil really got my attention. I want to say I can't think of when these issues came out. Is when Frank Miller, one of my favorite comic book writers, started writing Daredevil, and when he was brought on and started, you know, telling the stories of Daredevil, Matt Murdock, I really got interested. I really was intrigued by it because think of what Frank Miller did with Batman in the '80s. He did the same thing for Daredevil. Yeah, he turned that character out of kind of a laughing stock of sorts or overlooked character and really brought him to the forefront. And it got my attention because before that, as I mentioned before, I really wasn't into that character too much. But due to Frank Miller's excellent writing, I really started to pay more attention to that character. But that's the introduction to him. That's who Daredevil is. That's who Matt Murdock is and his background and his abilities. And so now that we know who this character is and what he's all about and what he stands for, let's jump into Netflix attempt at a superhero universe, which I think was a successful attempt. Yeah, they kind of dropped the ball with they dropped the ball with Iron Fist, but it was a nice try. In that last season of Luke Cage, it just man, it's so frustrating because I loved that show. Oh, I love that show, and I love that character, and they kind of messed it up. They ain't no kind of, they messed it up. But Daredevil, they knocked it out of the park. Daredevil is it was created by Drew Goddard for Netflix. It was based on the Marvel Comics character, and it was set in the MCU, sharing continuity with the franchise's films. And it was the first Marvel Netflix series leading to the crossover miniseries, The Defenders. Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil, was played by Charlie Cox, and Charlie Cox knocked it out of the park. As a matter of fact, he was so good they had to bring him back to revitalize this series for Disney Plus. Nobody else can play this role. There's nobody after Charlie Cox graced our television screens with playing this character. Nobody else can play this role. They have had 50 Batmans. They have had 50 Supermans. They have had countless Spider-Man. But my God, there's only one Daredevil. Yeah, Ben Affleck did what he did, but we're excluding that. My goodness, man. And I knew nothing of Charlie Cox prior to Daredevil. And when I saw set for photos before this series came out, I was like, man, he's kind of small. I wasn't expecting him to be, Hercules size, Thor size, or anything like that. I thought he was going to be a little taller at least. He looked kind of short, and I don't know how tall Charlie Cox is. And it don't matter no more because when he when he became Daredevil, man, he owned his role. He owned it and still is. Charlie Cox just dove head first into this role. And you can tell he loved it. You can tell that he truly enjoys playing this character. I mean, he's still playing him 10 years later. He played him in probably the sneakiest cameo of all time in Spider-Man No Way Home. It gets overshadowed because of what took place in that film with Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire popping up in that movie. nobody talks about Charlie Cox in that film as Matt Murdock, but that was a cool cameo. And Charlie Cox returned to play him, and that was his first time playing the character since the Netflix show stopped airing. And I remember the theater I was in when me and my family went to go see Spider-Man: No Way Home. Everybody cheered when they saw him. I mean, it felt so good because I thought it was over. I thought it was over. We weren't going to see this character no more, or him play this character no more. But lo and behold, he played him in the MCU nonetheless, proper. Even though this series is kind of linked, but never integrated with any other characters in the MCU, and this was the first time that this actually happened. And then he popped up in She-Hulk, even though She-Hulk didn't hit the mark. It was good to see him back as Daredevil again, and now we're getting him in his own show or a continuation of the Daredevil series on Disney Plus. Here on the Netflix show, you had Deborah Ann Wall, who joined him, Aiden Henson, Rosario Dawson, and Vincent D'Onofrio. I believe I'm saying his name right. If I'm not, I apologize. But he played Wilson Fisk, aka Kingpin, and he is returning as that character as well in this new series. But we seen him earlier. He was in Hawkeye, he was in Echo, and he's back yet again as Kingpin. Season 1 of Daredevil on Netflix, it sees lawyer by day Matt Murdock use his heightened senses from being blinded as a young boy to fight crime at night on the streets of New York City's Hell's Kitchen neighborhood as Daredevil, while uncovering a conspiracy of the criminal underground being led by Wilson Fisk. Just to recap season 1, just going to go over some bullet points throughout these seasons. Not going to break them down. Just going to try to jog your memory if you've seen them. If you haven't seen them, please go watch them. They're on Disney Plus now as well to watch. So enjoy that. But just to recap, Matt Murdock, he was blinded as a boy after saving someone from being hit by a car. The accident involved spilling radioactive chemical the rest of his senses. Matt grew up working class with a single father named Jack, who died after he refused to throw a boxing match, leaving Matt orphaned. A mysterious blind man named Stick finds Matt and offers to train him for an eventual war. Stick is very cold and leaves Matt when Matt gets too attached to him as a father figure. Stick in this season or in this series is played by Scott Glenn, which initially I was like, when he popped up as Stick, because Stick is this master of martial arts and everything, and I've never seen Scott Glenn do throw a kick or martial arts style punch in a film before. Love Scott Glenn as an actor. I'm not hating on him, but I was like, But when this character popped up on the show, I was like, okay, go ahead on, Scott. Great job, man. I really enjoyed his portrayal of Stick. In the present day, Matt is an upstart lawyer with his best friend Foggy Nelson, and the two come upon a trial, or at least a trail of breadcrumbs that starts with the case of Karen Page, who is portrayed by Deborah Ann Wall, and she's a secretary who is framed for murder after coming upon an embezzlement scheme that would have led to discovering. This part I was intrigued by because the way they set it up at first, you really didn't know where Karen Page was heading. Now, the Karen Page that's in the comics has a different path than what she has on this show. The Karen Page in the comics, I believe, is the Born Again comic. That comic series from Daredevil that this character was introduced. I could be wrong. Like I said, I'm not Daredevil aficionado here, but I believe that's where she was, and I think she dies in that comic book. But I could be mistaken. But that's where my memory is leading me to. But I like the direction that they took, and end up that character plays a major role going forward in not just this season, but in the series as a whole. And she's coming back for Born Again, nonetheless, which is good to see. Another point is when he is a boy, Wilson Fix grows up with an abusive father who he eventually kills after being pushed to snap one day. Wilson Fisk grew up to become a powerful businessman and criminal mastermind, pulling strings and other bosses in Hell's Kitchen with the intent to gentrify the city and make it a haven for the rich elite. He sees himself as a hero and has grown up lonely and with mental health issues and uh just crazy. He's basically Donald Trump. But it was cool that we got a backstory to Wilson Fisk. And one of the great things about this show, we had 13 episodes. 13, which is foreign these days because you're lucky to get 8 episodes out of a show. I don't know how many episodes we're getting of Born Again, but we got 13 on Netflix. That's more than enough time to get story flushed out, characters flushed out, everything was flushed out. And we was able to get a flushed out backstory of Wilson Fisk that I don't recall in the comics. This could have been in the comics, but I don't remember reading anything about Wilson Fisk's background, his origin. But it was good to see on this show nonetheless. Even if it is in the comics, it was good to see on this show because it really, I don't want to say sympathize, make you sympathize, but you do in a way. You kind of understand. I think that's a better word. There's a better adjective there. You can understand Wilson Fisk, but he's still a villain. He's still a ruthless killer, a criminal mastermind, and what he's trying to do, gentrify the city, is not good. He's out for the rich. But dealing with the mental health aspect of it all, also a nice touch. Beautiful. It was Chef's Kiss how they flushed out Wilson Fisk here, and Vincent did just amazing. Now, Vincent D'Onofrio, I don't think he gets enough flowers as well in his career. This goes back to Full Metal Jacket, which is the first time I ever seen him on screen. The dude is just super talented. He can play anything. Anything. And I'm lying. That ain't the first time I saw him. The first time I saw him was in The Adventures of Babysitting. That was the first time I saw him when he played Thor. Nonetheless, ironically, a Marvel character. But yeah, the dude can play anything. Like I said, he can play that character in Adventures in Babysitting. He can play this other character that we are just so sympathetic. The most sympathetic person I've ever seen in a film. I mean, I cry to this day. I'm about to cry right now thinking about his character in Full Metal Jacket. And when he snaps and kills the drill sergeant and all that there and in boot camp, you kind of like, yep. Yep, he was supposed to. I mean, he was supposed to kill everybody in that barracks, but that's neither here nor there. But going to Men in Black when he played that bug, and even what's that movie with Jennifer Lopez where he's the serial killer and Jennifer Lopez goes into his mind, and some type of thing. I forgot what it is. All of it. It wasn't a good movie, but he was good in it. The dude is phenomenal, and Law and Order as well. He was good on Law and Order. But anyways, the dude nailed Kingpin. Nailed it. He brought a different layer to that character that I wasn't expecting, and I completely loved it. And I loved the obsession that he had, this love that he had for the character of Vanessa. Uh, just a good twist to this show. It almost became the Kingpin show, and I wasn't mad at it for that. Moving on to the other point of season one, Matt spends most of his nights as this nameless vigilante. Actually, he was dressing in black. He wasn't dressing in red. He didn't have a proper quote unquote costume. He was just dressed in all black. I think they used to call him the man in black when he ran around and beating people half to death. Uh, it was cool. And Wilson Fisk had framed the man in black for a bombing around the city, or a couple of bombings around the city. So he was now referred to as the devil of Hell's Kitchen. And so Kingpin's control and reach pushed Matt to a conflicted place of simply wanting to kill Wilson Fisk rather than bring him in for justice, to turn him in and do it the right way. And so there's that dynamic of the show that Matt Murdock is conflicted on what his belief system is and what his emotional side is dealing with, and him trying to find that balance. That was the conflict throughout this show, and actually through the whole series, not just season one. We see Stick return in this season, later on in the season, and he disagrees with Matt on a lot of things because Stick is a cold individual. he Stick killed a kid. Matt and Stick, they fought, and Stick leaves again. They have different philosophies. Let's not forget, Matt is a religious man. He doesn't believe in killing anybody. That's part of the conflict that he's facing with the Kingpin element of it all. And so, and then we're going to see in season 2, it goes even deeper, but we'll get to that in a minute. Yeah, Stick is the same way. Stick doesn't he doesn't care. He justice to him is by any means necessary. Yeah, bring him in, cool. Kill him, cooler. He doesn't care. We see Matt confront Fisk with the intent to kill him, but is weakened after a prior fight, and he's outmatched. He gets his butt kicked, and discovering that Fisk's suit also doubles as body armor. And so Matt barely escapes in this fight, but is found by Froggy while he's in his costume. And so this causes them to have a brief falling out over this, which causes another conflict in Matt's life. Also at this time, we got Karen Page. She's taken hostage by Wilson Fisk, right-hand man, who she ends up killing to escape, but keeps that trauma with herself. Matt finds Melvin, the guy Fisk is blackmailing to make the armored suits, and cuts a deal to get a suit of his own. And so this is where we get the seeds planted for Matt to get his signature suit. Matt secures a key witness to testify against Wilson Fisk and gets him arrested. Fisk proposes to Vanessa before being taken away, and then stages an escape with people on his payroll, which causes Matt, fresh with this shiny new Daredevil suit, to intercept Fisk, beating him in a hype alleyway fight, and leaves him to the cops. This season was just a perfect season of comic book material. This felt like a comic book come to light, or come into motion. And it just, I don't know, it checked all the boxes for me. And then as far as a cinephile, as somebody who likes film and television shows and great acting, the scene with Karen Page and Kingpin. Oh my God, that's one of the best scenes I have seen in a Netflix show ever. Ever. Best written, best acted. I mean, just unbelievable. It was the most exciting scene away from the hallway fight scene, which is probably one of the most gruesome, exciting one take hallway fight scenes you'll ever see. And that scene with Wilson Fisk and Karen Page sitting at a table talking rivaled that scene. It was that good. I loved season one, and I was hooked from that moment on. I was hooked. I said, well, it can't get no better than that. I was scared to death for season two until they announced that the Punisher will be a part of season two, and I was, well, I'm good. We're off and running now. We're off and running, and John Bernthal will be playing the Punisher. I At that time I was watching The Walking Dead, really into The Walking Dead, and John Bernthal was on that show, and you could see why he was cast as the Punisher if you watch The Walking Dead. His character, Shane, and yeah, that's perfect casting. And I've seen him in other things, but I was like, yeah, that's perfect casting. And he exceeded that in season two. In season two, Matt Murdock continues to balance life as a lawyer and Daredevil while crossing paths with Frank Castle, aka Punisher, a vigilante with far deadlier methods, as well as the return of ex-girlfriend Electra Nachos, or Nachos. I never could get it right, but we get Electra in this season as well. A lot of people don't like season two, or should I say, didn't like season two. I can see where it wasn't as good as the first season. I will concede to that. It wasn't as good, but it was still a good season. Yeah, I still enjoyed it. Me personally, I thought that there were some points in this season that I didn't too much agree with. I don't have as many bullet points for season two because, like I said, season two, and I agree to an extent, was not as good as the first season. I don't think that they really went in depth with Matt Murdock's story. They were telling way too much other stuff. You know, they went into the Punisher a lot. Now, I get it. You're introducing a new character. You want to flush him out, but the Punisher was getting his own show. You could have saved that to his own show. You know, you didn't have to give him so much here, but he was so good. He was so good. Daredevil kind of took a back burner on his own show, and it's sad to say, but that's what happened. But I still enjoyed it. I still enjoyed it. One of the things I didn't like about this season, or at least one of the problems, was Matt Murdock. He was pretty unlikable in this season. You can get behind him in the first season, you know. In season two, I didn't really like him. he he was kind of a douche, you know. The way he treated Karen and the way he treated Foggy after Elektra entered the picture, it was like, come on, man, you don't have to do that. I mean, these are peoples here. I get it. You know, this is your love, your first love or whatever. I get it. You know, we all been there, but I wouldn't have did that, man. That was messed up by the way he treated her, or treated them, I should say. Was the story weak? The story was a little weak. It wasn't as strong as season one. Season one just felt more fleshed out. Season two just felt like this is a backdoor pilot to The Punisher when it comes out. And that's really the vibe I got from season two. it didn't really use much imagination. It didn't really dive into the comics as much as I would have liked. Now, the dynamic between Daredevil and the Punisher is pretty much the same you'll find in the comics. How they're trying to achieve the same goal just in a different manner. That's how they are. They're like Magneto and Professor X, both trying to achieve the same goal just in different ways. And to put it in more realistic comparisons, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, trying to get to the same goal just in different fashions. And so that's what Daredevil and the Punisher are. They didn't really do a good job here because the conflict was that the Punisher is trying to push Daredevil to see things his way, to do things his way. Punisher has zero problems killing. Actually, that's all he do. He don't. That's the only matter of justice that he dishes out, and that's that. There is no apprehending. There is no reading your rights. It's killing you, and there should have been more conflict than it was. Now, there was a little, existential crisis within Matt, but not as much as it was in season one when Matt was kind of pushed to that point, and we can feel the struggle within him throughout that season. Here in season two, not so much. You really did feel that he was really more on the Punisher side. It really wasn't much of a fight there. But ultimately, of course he went his way. But it didn't get there in the matter that I wanted. Elektra, her addition, it was inevitable. I knew that it was gonna eventually happen. I wasn't expecting it in season two, and it felt kind of jumbled up. It was a lot going on in this season, and I felt they probably could have pushed that back. They could have focused more on the Punisher slash Daredevil element of it all. But it was a nice addition. The actress who played her, I can't, her name escapes me right now. I don't have it written down right here, but she did a fine job as Elektra. Um, I would say she did a better job than Jennifer Garner, and that's saying something. I honestly, dude, she did a really good job. Very sexy, very physical. She fits all the attributes. She checks all the boxes. Um, Good casting. It just, I don't know, that character wasn't really written and fleshed out enough for this series. But season two was decent, not as good as the first. Now, before we get into season three, just want to remind everybody around this time, right before, well, not right before, but before season three came out, we've already been introduced to these other characters. We've been introduced to the Punisher, of course, from Daredevil, but we also got a Luke Cage series, we got a Jessica Jones series, we got a Iron Fist, and was there another one? Anyway, we got all of these shows, and we also had the Defenders. We had the crossover that took place before we got season three. So all of these events have taken place. So now we arrive at the third and final season of the Netflix Daredevil. And in season three, Matt Murdock recently recovered from near death, attempts to rebuild his life after facing off against the newly released Kingpin, who manipulates a troubled FBI agent named Benjamin Dax Poindexter, who we also know as Bullseye, into becoming a murderous fake Daredevil, leading to a chaotic battle between Matt, Kingpin, and Bullseye as Fist schemes to regain his power and reputation in Hell's Kitchen, ultimately accumulating to a confrontation at Wilson Fisk's wedding when Matt exposes Wilson Fisk's crime with the help of a dying FBI agent's testimony leading to Fisk recaptured by the authorities throughout the season. Matt struggles with his identity as Daredevil and his personal demons while gripping with the consequences of his action. This is a rebound from season two. Season three, once again, I read where a lot of people were kind of on the fence with season three. I love season three. Season three and Bullseye was such a good character. Once again, they did an excellent job of flushing out this character. I was so on board with this because not Daredevil, Bullseye in the movie, the Ben Affleck movie, Bullseye in that film, I actually liked. He was played by Colin Farrell nonetheless, and I actually liked him. Was he campy? Yeah. Silly? Sure. But I liked it. But I wanted to see a more grounded, serious Bullseye, and we got him here. And his story, my God, his story was so heartbreaking and cool. I, man, once again, I wanted to see more of his story than anything else. Just a few key points from season three was Wilson Fisk's return. Kingpin is the primary antagonist in this season, using his manipulative skills to orchestrate events and gain back his power. That was a cool element to the show. The rise of Bullseye, as I stated before, Dax Poindexter is introduced as a potential ally, but is manipulated by Kingpin into becoming a deadly Bullseye. And before he became the Bullseye, uh, not interpreting, uh, yeah, interpreting, Daredevil. It That was cool too to kind of frame Daredevil as this murderous vigilante. I thought that was a cool element before he made the turn to Bullseye. Uh, cool, cool. I like that. I don't know if that's in a comic book issue that they adapted that from. I didn't read it, but I love seeing it in this season. Matt's internal struggle was another key point in this season. Matt grapples with his identity as Daredevil and the moral complexities of his action. Going back through all of the things that he did. It's like us. You ever look back on things that seemed like a good idea at the time 20 years ago, but now you think back like, I shouldn't have did that. I shouldn't have did that, or I shouldn't have said that, or things of that nature. I know I do. If you don't, I don't say I regret anything I've done. I've never sat back and regretted doing anything in life, because everything I've done, every decision I've made me the man that I am today, and I kind of like this fella. And so I think everything that I did was the right thing to do, but sometimes I think back like maybe I should have did it differently, to whereas I could have arrived to this point quicker as opposed of not doing what I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? Like this show, I wish I would have started doing this show years ago, and here I am. But it's all in the right time. But yeah, this was a struggle of Matt's throughout this season. I like that uh, uh, struggle that he was going through, mental struggle that he was going through. And that's what was missing in season two. It was there, but it wasn't flushed out right. It just didn't feel right like it did in season one and season three. Season two just didn't have that same pop. But they regained it here in this season. Karen Page had a pivotal role in this season, exposing Wilson Fisk. Going back to their epic scene from season one. I like that as well. And then we get the climax at the wedding, which was a cool little showdown between Daredevil and Kingpin as well as Bullseye. And so I did like this season. It was a much needed rebound from season 2, and definitely a rebound from the Defenders, because the Defenders didn't hit home with me. I was hoping and wishing and praying that they were able to knock that show out the park, and it just didn't do nothing. It wasn't bad. It wasn't unwatchable. You know what I'm saying? It was just like there. You seen it and you're like, okay, I seen it, and that's that. I couldn't tell you anything else about that show. Nothing, because I think I've watched it twice, and that was around the time they first came out. I haven't watched it since, and I have no desire to. Um, yeah, I'll leave it at that. But season 3, cool rebound. Sadly, that was it. Uh, until now, thankfully, but that was it. Daredevil on Netflix, a triumph, if you will, for Marvel Television. I think this was the best product they've put out. The only thing that will rival it would probably be The Punisher. And I'm just talking Netflix shows. I'm not going into the WandaVisions and the Lokis and all this here that's on Disney Plus. I'm talking just Netflix. I think those were some of the best content that Marvel put out. And because it was so real. It was so real, so grounded. Completely enjoyed them. And the fact that we got 3 seasons out of this show is a miracle, man. Because we don't get that these days. We honestly don't. And Charlie Cox, born to play this role. Vincent D'Onofrio, think I got it right that time. Born to play Kingpin. I'm just excited for this new go around. I'm excited to see what's next for this character, for this franchise as well. Will it just be one season? Will they have multiple seasons on Disney Plus? Time will tell, but I'm excited to see how it goes. I want to know, everybody, did you enjoy the Netflix era of Marvel television with Daredevil, all 3 seasons, which you can currently watch now on Disney Plus as you await Daredevil Born Again on Disney Plus, March the 4th. I am excited for it. I want to know how excited for it you are. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also search for this show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Don't forget about YouTube. Subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel and like this video if you don't mind. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to Movie Goodness here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this little recap of Marvel Television's Daredevil, which aired on Netflix for 3 glorious seasons. Oh man, I can't wait for Daredevil Born Again. I am chopping at the bit, man. Hopefully it doesn't let me down. But I want you all to know that I love you. Continue to love everyone. And until we speak again, you all be blessed.